Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I could have the reading of the mission statement, please.
Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
And the reading of the vision statement.
Richmond Community Schools, a collaborative community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
Thank you. Next, we will have celebrations. We're excited to have the RHS girls golf team here. Dr. Wright.
At this time, we're going to ask President Martin and trustees, Mrs. Hazel Baker, our Director of Communications and Student Support, to come and pay homage to tonight's honorees.
Well, as you can see, we have a little bit of a crowd tonight, but I just want to talk about the great success that we have from some of our student athletes that are here tonight. So, girls, can you guys come up for a second and we'll introduce yourselves?
And Mrs. Hazel Baker, which girls are these?
This is the Richmond High School girls varsity golf team. So they're going to be here to celebrate. You guys,
Those were the elementary. I like that.
All right. So how about we have you guys take your name, what grade you're in, and how long have you been playing golf? All right. Go ahead.
I'm a French. I'm a sophomore, and I've been playing golf on a team for 6 years.
I'm Hannah Sterling. I'm also a sophomore, and I've been playing on a team for also 6 years.
I'm Priya Hodges, and I'm a junior, and I've been playing golf on a team for about 5 or 6 years.
Hi, I'm Kyla Rogan. I'm a freshman, and I've also been playing on teams for 6 years. I'm Peyton Walton. I'm a sophomore, and I've been playing golf for way too long.
I'm Alejandra. On a team I've been playing for 6 years, and I'm a sophomore.
All right. So tell me a little bit. Did any of you guys play on the middle school or the junior high team?
Yes.
All of you did. Wow. And then prior to that, didn't you guys start doing the first tee program? Yeah. All of you did. Well, now, did you do the first tee as well? Oh, you did. Everyone did too. So tell me a little bit about what was it like for NCC and also sectionals. Who wants to speak?
Well, I know for NCC, when we went out that morning, we didn't really know what the competition looked like. We had people drop out of our conference. We've had people, different teams in and out just because they, at some points, have a girls' team at some points down. So we didn't really know what to expect. But I think as we went out there, we started to realize like we could win this. Last year we came in second, but Harrison wasn't in our conference anymore. So we kind of, as we went out, we started to get this hope that we'd win, and then eventually all the scores came in, and we were kind of just standing up there waiting, kind of hopeful. So,
And some of you received individual awards as well.
we
were all also NCC. I'm sorry, I didn't research myself. All right. So again, can you guys tell us a bit who did you guys come with tonight, or would you guys want to bring your coach up here? Yeah. Coaches.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell us a little bit about, you have a young team.
I'm sorry.
No juniors, no seniors.
Yes,
one.
correct.
Oh, one junior. I'm sorry.
One junior.
Sorry. So tell me, this is your first year with this group of girls.
Correct.
How's it been?
It's been fantastic. I think like Dr. Wright, a couple others here are former coaches, and it's great to have student athletes that buy in, not only to what you want as a coach, but when it comes to representing the city, the school, their individual families. They've all done that since August 2nd. And I think from a coach's perspective, and my assistant coach is Brad Freeman is also here. That's one of the things I think we've been most pleased with. We knew we had a young group. You got 4 sophomores, 5 sophomores, a junior. Lauren Bell is not able to make it this evening. She's our lone senior. But we look at it from the standpoint that we've got everybody back next year. We've got 4 of these 5 coming back the next 2 years. We've got a feeder system with a couple of other young 7th and 8th graders coming up. So the future for this particular school and this particular girls golf team is, looks really good.
Coach, forgive me for the millions watching around the world. Of course, I know. But can you share your name, sir?
The one that you know, or the one that's
Your school appropriate name, yes, sir.
okay. My name's Kyle Ingram,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes, sir.
my family has the Ingram name's been around since about 1962.
That's right.
With my father Troy, my mother Marilyn, both educators here in the school system. So there are times where I look at my mom and dad and the work that they put in through their lives, and I look at me personally and I go, I think at times maybe I was adopted. But they're great role models for me, and I try, probably don't as successful as they were as far as I'm concerned, to be such a role model for the young ladies, but all the credit goes to them. They put the time in, they put the work in, and they get the just reward. So kudos to them.
So what's next? What's the regionals?
Regionals
What's
on Saturday.
And where's regionals? Anderson. So how do you guys feel?
Edgewood Country Club, Edgewood Golf Club.
Good.
And they've been there. They've had a couple practice rounds, so they're prepared. It's like anything else. You just go, you show up, whatever you got that day, you play.
Well, we appreciate you coming tonight. Any other questions? Anyone?
No questions, but thank you. Thank you for representing our, RHS and RCS. Thank you for balancing your schoolwork and your athletic life, because we know that's a balance. So, and I'm assuming you must have patience, because golf takes a lot of patience, right? So, thank
And I'd like
you.
to thank the family for coming too. So thank you guys for coming.
Congratulations, ladies. Yeah, continue to represent our city and represent the school, and we're all behind you, Coach. We're all behind you.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to get a picture after this round of applause. So congrats.
All right, so turn this from the kind of like Mr. One, I I'll go back. I guess. Okay, here we go. So you have to do one more. Okay. You're good. Thank you.
Just like this. I almost dropped it.
Next on our agenda is public commentary. Cindy, do we have people signed up this evening?
We do. We have two.
Great. Let me go ahead and read this first. For those who wish to comment at this evening's board meeting, please keep your comments fact-based and within the time permitted. Comments are not to be personally directed or abusive. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process available in policy 9130. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, but you will receive a personal follow-up email from the board president. The maximum time to speak is 5 minutes. Please state your name and address before speaking.
Our first person is Jaylee.
Don't start the time yet.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jay Lee. I'm the president of REA. I've been at Richmond High School for a long time. We've had a challenging couple of weeks, and I've done a lot of soul searching, and I'm going to yield my time, and I'm going to come and have a private conversation with Dr. Wright and Mr. Mops tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And hopefully we can, there's some issues with our communication process, specifically with the emergency action procedures that we need to address and fix. And so I'm going to shortchange it tonight. And hopefully, well, I know we'll get it worked out. We always do. And I appreciate everybody here, and I appreciate all you guys' hard work. And we'll just keep striving to get better. Thank you.
All right, our next person is Erica Pearson.
Hi, I know you've got a lot going on, but I'm here tonight on behalf of the REA Racial Equity Coalition. We want to thank the board for discussing the draft equity policy at your August 14th board meeting and letting us and the wider community know where you stand. We appreciate your confidence that we are good people working very hard on the issue and working in good faith. And we believe that all the challenges that face schools today are interrelated and that what we're working on is connected to discipline and to student achievement and all the things that are so important to us. We heard board members say that they feel that a standalone board policy is not needed, but that you're open to potentially including language and definitions that are not covered by existing policies and that we think would be important to add. Members of the coalition are carefully studying the RCS policies and guidelines to see what those additions might be. And we'd like to meet with the board soon at a work session to share proposed changes. We also look forward to participating in the upcoming strategic planning process and bringing important community perspectives to that work. One of the things that board members said on August 14th was that they weren't aware of any problems in the area of equity and inclusion and that they wanted to know if any existed so that they could be rectified. Over the past 3 years of my work with the coalition, we've received reports of 2 situations where students felt they had been harassed by other students because of their racial or ethnic group, and 1 situation where a student felt they had been discriminated against by a staff member. Each of those reports came to us at second hand. In one case, the incident had been shared with a teacher who didn't know who within RCS to report to and who was also afraid to speak up. In another case, a pastor had been appealed to by a parent. And in the third incident, it was reported to the president of the local NAACP chapter because the student felt that school administration had not taken the incident seriously. In each of those cases, neither the student, the parent, nor the member of the coalition was aware of the people to whom these incidents should be reported if the complainant felt that the usual channels weren't working. We can't know how many times things have happened that were never brought to our attention. In listening sessions with Wayne County students at the Youth Summit last year and with some RCS teachers and paraprofessionals more than a year ago, individuals spoke of hurtful comments that they never reported to anyone. We're encouraged to see that the board's new anti-discrimination and harassment policy number 2260 begins with language that echoes some ideas in the coalition's equity policy draft. It says your policy says any form of discrimination or harassment can be devastating to an individual's academic progress, social relationships, and or personal sense of self-worth. For the members of the RCS policy to really community to use this policy, they need to know who the compliance officers are to whom they're supposed to turn, and that the policy requires all RCS staff to report any incidents to the compliance officers within 2 business days. In policy 2260, it says that the compliance officers are the human resources director and a human resources officer, and that their names, titles, and contact information will be published annually on the RCS website and in the parent, student, and staff handbooks. Policy 5517, which covers student-to-student harassment, says that the compliance officers are the director of human resources and the directors of exceptional education. Right now, the RCS website has good information about reporting cases of discrimination in the area of special education or Section 504 services, but there's no mention of harassment or discrimination against other protected classes such as race, color, national origin, gender status, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And policy 5517 also states that notice of the board's policy on anti-harassment in the educational environment and the identity of the corporation's compliance officers shall be posted throughout the corporation. I've seen a poster in a local college that provides notice of its anti-harassment policy and is posted in every campus building and has the names, email addresses, and phone numbers of the compliance officers, as well as a QR code that can be scanned to report an incident. We hope that soon the administration will provide up-to-date and specific contact information on the RCS website and on posters in school buildings to comply with the policies. We also look forward to working with the superintendent as he takes action on the other responsibilities delegated to him at policy 2260 in the areas of curriculum content, staff training, student access, corporation support, student evaluation, and as the policy says, preventive educational measures to create greater awareness of unlawful discriminatory practices to corporations, students, and staff. So thank you for listening. We thank you all for your work on behalf of all the students and families in our community.
Thank you. Next on our agenda consent items.
Move we approve consent items 5.01 through 5.05.
Second?
I have a motion by member Zaleski, a second by member Stoltz. Questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. Under action items, first item is donations. I'll make the motion. I have a motion by member Brennan, a second by member Brand. Questions or comments? And probably our comments would be thank you, thank you, thank you. When we have our list of donors, it's always quite impressive, and this list is not short of impressive as always. So many different people in our community and businesses and lots of different purposes going toward athletics and other things at the high school and civic hall. So thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. Next on our next action item is 6.02, the Head Start Agreement.
I move that we approve the Head Start agreement.
Second.
I have a motion by member Stoltz, a second by member Zaleski. Questions or comments?
This is a amendment to a agreement that we passed previously. Is that correct, Dr. Wright? Just what were the couple of amendments?
Yes, sir.
What were the couple of amendments to that?
You know what, I'm going to ask that our Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, Mrs. Elizabeth Margaret, come forward to speak to that question, as well as providing the other detailed background information to this particular action item. Thank you, Mrs. Margaret.
I know that there were 2 documents uploaded to Board Docs. One highlighted all of the changes that were made to the original agreement that were put forth by CDI Wayne County. Again, vetted with Attorney Cross, and so then the public copy just has the new amendment or agreement.
And it is a new governing organization over Head Start, so that was some of the delay that caused
Correct.
some of this.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mrs. Margaret.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. Next action item is 6.03, the lease with Northwoods League for use of McBride. I make the motion.
I'll second.
The motion by member Brennan, a second by member Stoltz. Questions or comments?
I'll just add, I'm not comfortable moving with this time. I think down the road, this makes a lot of sense, but I think there are too many unknowns at McBride as far as what we're going to do with that facility and how that might look in the short term. And so I would not be in favor of going in with a 3-year lease.
Just to echo that, I think there was a charge to look at potential summer options. There's been Roosters and Jazz, thank you, in the past. But with some potential updates to those grounds, I think we need to make sure that we've vetted those out and our timelines are down with that before we move forward with a lease that could potentially make it difficult to do any of the updates on the property.
I would like to hear from our cabinet members, I guess, who are kind of spearheading this, because what I'm seeing does make sense. I'm personally excited about the opportunity. We did exactly that. We said we would like for this to be something.
There was never a vote. I mean, we didn't vote on it. So when you say we, that may have been the consensus, but I don't know. I mean, I also remember us saying we wanted to have a seat and be welcome there. And I don't think that's really happened.
I guess I was, maybe just Pete and I were under the impression that the board was saying that's something we would like to explore as far as an opportunity. So I wasn't
I think
saying
down the
that
road
we
it makes sense. I mean, I
voted
just,
on it.
well, you indicated that we gave them the go ahead to get a team in ASAP, and I don't think that was the consensus to my knowledge.
Okay. From my perspective, what I was trying to say was simply that I thought collectively as a group we showed support of possibly moving in that direction. And this is what I'm seeing as a result of us asking. Is that a fair statement, John?
My issue is the timeline. I think maybe 2 years from now, this makes sense. I think now it does not.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'm trying to say from my perspective, I'm excited about the possibility. I do feel like this is something that I at least was excited to hear about, and it seems like it makes sense. Obviously, if collectively the timeline doesn't work for us, then we vote it down. But again, I would like to hear from the cabinet as far as why this timeline does make sense. If it does, we obviously will decide in favor, and if it doesn't, collectively we won't. But yeah, Dr. Wright, if we could hear from
Yes,
just
ma'am,
some of the
absolutely.
ins and outs in regards to this project.
Yes, ma'am, Member Stokes, what I'm going to ask is that Mrs. Karen Scalf, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, along with Mr. Robert Lee, our Richmond High School Athletic Director, as well as Mr. Matt Bomberg. And I hope I did not butcher his last name, but he is the representative from the Northwoods League. They all three are in attendance. I know that they can speak a little more intelligently and with broader breadth and depth to some of the questions that may pose or may come from not only Mrs. Stoltz, but also our extended board. And so, Mrs. Scout, if you could just give us a brief timeline where we were, where we are, where we're going, and then Mr. Lee and Mr. Bomberg, if you all could support and just weigh in on.
So I will say this has
And I know we have
yes,
PowerPoint
so you have it's kind of a brief assessment of the lease in general and the timeline that you can refer to. What I will say is that there is no time like the present. So we have been working really hard since January to make improvements to the field. We've talked about that a number of times here at this board table, as well as in what used to be working groups. And we are at a point where, you know, the fact that we can do this is super exciting because it is to us who have been looking into it a win-win for the community as well as RCS, as well as we hope the Northwoods League. So Mr. Bomberg and his team reached out to Mr. Bolser back in the spring with interest in the field prior to even having anything started and knowing the facility history and how it works. And just over the period of time in which we've made improvements, it's at a place now, and I can let him speak to that, where we can make this happen. And the thing about, I'll let Mr. Lee kind of to put input into this, athletic fields are meant to be used, and they are better maintained when they are used. And so knowing that we're ready, and knowing that this is an opportunity for all of us, it's a really great time to bring this back to McBride. So I'll just let each of them kind of weigh in a little bit. And then if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We worked on this for quite a while and got to everything to fruition last week so we could get it to you this week. And so it has been a work in progress, but we're excited about it.
So we have been working really hard at this. They will be, in my opinion, will be great partners. Looking at it from a long-term perspective, just last month we met as a region as far as baseball, and we were awarded the baseball sectionals for 2026. Went into the meeting, wanted to fight hard for it immediately, but that, once this opportunity came, I thought that why not have someone in there first? And we get an opportunity to see what all the glitches could possibly be, and who better to do it than a team that will have high caliber athletes on it, have a higher standard, than really high school, and who will be able to maintain the field and do upgrades and things like that to make sure that it will be ready for our regular season, and then even more important, be ready to host, the sectionals in the spring of 2026. And so, that's one of the things about high school is that, a baseball field sitting unused still has to be maintained regardless. And so the fact that we would have someone in there that will be maintaining it, over the summer, and then we would have what we call limited contact period, where September around 7th or 8th, baseball will be able to get back on it again. And then we will be able to put it away for the winter, and they will be ready to use it in the spring. And we would have had, top-notch athletes playing, and it's hard to get a sectionals, especially in Richmond, because people feel like we're the one that's kind of out there in the island and the travel and things like that. So it's hard. And to be awarded for 2026, we got to make sure that we show well. It has to be show well, to be able to. Because once you lose a sectional, it's hard to get. That's my experience. It's hard to get them back. Because once someone else takes over and those teams playing in it have a great experience, it's hard to get other districts to vote on, returning it to a certain location. So I do think this will be a win-win situation for us, and I do think they will be great partners, and I think it'll be awesome for the community to have things to do in the summertime.
Sure, Mr. Lamb. So what about softball? Are we having a softball section on?
No.
Okay, and why is that?
Okay, so this is how the meeting goes. Okay, every 2 years, the ISSJ sends out to those particular teams that are operating in the same region to vote on your location. So when you vote on the location, you have to have so much seating, you have to have so much parking, you have to have so much lighting. Okay, and McBride fit those categories. And as far as softball goes, we definitely want to continue to, work towards that.
I mean, I guess that's my question. Our softball facility doesn't meet those requirements. It's not on par with the baseball facility. And as a corporate trustee, I'm thinking at some point the law says that those fields need to be equivalent, I believe. Equal opportunity, right? So at some point does McBride have to convert to a softball?
Equal opportunity don't mean equivalent.
Well,
that doesn't mean equivalent.
When I walk by McBride, I see a glorious baseball field, and I see a little tiny softball facility.
And if you go and see a top-notch high school baseball facility, even a top-notch high school softball facility, they won't look the same.
Well, ours don't look the same.
So what I'm saying, we're not any different.
I don't want to pursue, I guess. I think maybe we have work to do in the future. Mm-hmm. And I would, no offense to the league, but I'd like to have our baseball, softball situation kind of worked out before we kind of sign a 3-year contract. Because I know we're getting ready to do a Title IX audit, but I have some concerns. And so that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, fair enough.
So,
just a comment to that too. We started a summer collegiate softball league this year also. So we're in the baseball and softball business as well. So both are a big deal to us, and we think the softball side, like you're talking about, will be almost bigger than the baseball side over time. But
Did I read that you guys have the first for-profit women's softball? Is
we
that
do.
right? That
Yep,
just
that's what we
opened this summer?
started
Yeah,
this summer.
that's
So it's
impressive.
just like the Northwoods League started as the first for-profit summer collegiate baseball, we started the first for-profit summer collegiate women's softball this year with 4 teams. Yeah, looking to grow that too, and once that facility gets up to that point here as well, we would look to bring in softball, as well, because that's what we're doing in a lot of our ballparks, a lot of our markets. We're currently playing softball in our baseball markets that have turf, just because you have to have turf or a skinned infield, because you can't play in the grass. But yeah, we're looking to grow that as well.
Real quick, that was one of the, some of the board members had excellent questions. Kim, you had like a slew of them, which I appreciated. I was like, this girl has thought through all of these things. Was yours the turf question maybe?
Yeah, I did originally, and so like I interned for the Roosters. Like I love it. And yeah, we had talked about potentially turfing McBride, and then adding movable bases for softball so that our varsity softball team has the same opportunity. So yeah.
So what would that look like if we did want to do that? Like,
if I may, I
would that
apologize.
mess up the timeline?
Well, I didn't see him in the crowd, and he's going to kick me in the back of the head at the end of the meeting. But Mr. Walton, our Director of Facilities and Security, can join this conversation because I know that in past practice, I know he and his team, along with our team as a collective, have been putting a lot of work in at McBride. To Mr. Weber's point, I know that last year was the first year in which we conducted softball there on that premises, and there is surely room for improvement. But I'm curious to know with Mr. Walton's expertise and of his assessment of the fields and grounds. I'd like for him to be able to weigh in with the collective here on answering those questions.
Well, it's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer to do this, guys. It's going to alleviate our maintenance costs during the summer. It's going to keep people in the facility. We're having eyes on the facility where stuff's going to be going. The facility's going to be put to use. And no one likes surprises when you go to open up a facility and there's stuff there because no one's been there. This is part of the ongoing maintenance of it is to put people in the facility. And having somebody willing to pay us to be in the facility. So it's a no-brainer. I don't see any negatives to this right now. It is. I know these guys have worked quite hard to put this thing together. It's an opportunity that not hardly any high schools get. And we took over McBride with the hope to restore it as a gem of the community and develop community partnerships. What's knocking at the door right now? Put it out there. The community partnership saying, hey, look at us. We're bringing baseball back to the community. Get excited about it. And here we are. Guys, this is an absolute no-brainer. I don't understand this conversation whatsoever.
Mr. Ward, can you speak to the turf, the question that came up regarding turf and the ability to punch in the bases? I think that was come up to maybe transcend in the course of time, McBride to being something that could both service baseball as well as softball. I'm not sure. Again, that facilities piece is not my bailiwick, as they say in the South, but I don't know. Anyone can tackle that question, but I know that you all can.
Well, right now we don't have a definite plan to turf, and we all know the resident expert in the community. His name's on the field, and when he's telling you not to turf it, you gotta listen to that. And the guy has more experience and knows more about that stadium than all of us put together would even have a quarter of the knowledge as he has. And if he's telling you not to turf it at this point in time, you gotta listen to it.
I mean, I would just say no one's told me not to turf it. That's the first I've heard of that. And just,
It's been talked about. Yes, but it's not no definitive plan to turn.
well, I would just say, I don't obviously have issues with the Northwoods League or baseball. I think for me personally, and we've been talking about McBride for almost a year. And I know sometimes when you have contracts, you can't really talk about what's going on, but it's like, I've wasted so much brain power thinking about McBride, and we've been talking about it and what's going in there and what are we doing and what are we painting. And then this has been going on since February and no one said a word.
Well, I can correct that. It really hasn't been going on since February. That was when the first initial email was sent. It was not sent to anyone in this room right now. Mr. Bomberg reached out in August again and just said, hey, didn't hear from you. So really we're talking about a month and a half where this has actually been an option. The other thing that I will say is in our conversations, in each and every one, it has been a true partnership relationship conversation. We have talked about there may be future improvements that they want to do, that we want to do, that we'll talk about together. So I do not feel like either of us are saying there'll be any limitations what the future may hold for that area. I think that what Mr. Walton refers to is Mr. Kate. When he's there, he says a lot. He does a lot of work down there for us. And he tells us that, this is a historic and nostalgic place. And he really, I think originally he probably loved the idea of turf, and the more he sees it coming back to life, he's been really excited about putting lines back in the grass, about doing things that just are exactly what that field is made for. So I know that in no way do we as a group feel limited by this partnership. I feel like this has always through this month been a conversation of growth, of opportunity, and of possible future endeavors. Softball really excited me when he said, you have softball field. There is room to grow here for all of us, and to do it together would be super exciting. So I just want everybody to know, because it initiated in February, it didn't mean that the conversations were there. That didn't really start until August, but it was that had been a request for quite a while.
I apologize for my passion on this, guys, but we have worked our tails off down at McBride. Everybody who's seen it, including everybody in this room, has said how great it looks. Share it. It's the opportunity to get the community back in, to build positive relationships and camaraderie with the city and the patrons. And hey, we'll bring summer baseball back. Let's get excited about this. Let's start using it. Let's start make that the facility it used to be. And you have a golden opportunity sitting right in front of you.
And on that note, if you don't mind speaking about a golden opportunity, because we can see it and you all can't. Attorney Cross has raised his electric hand, and so Mr. Rogers, if you don't mind allowing Mr. Attorney Cross to be heard. Attorney Cross, can you hear us, sir?
You're on mute.
Are you on mute, Ron?
Do we have the?
There we go.
Do we have the volume up here? Attorney Cross, give us 1 minute, sir. We're having some technical difficulties. We're going to switch to rotary phone mode in 3, 2. I'm teasing. Yeah, just bear with us. Sorry, Attorney Cross.
Say something.
Do we have the television screen volume up?
Oh, right here.
So for the Northwoods, if this is this table here, what does that do to you?
It just slows it down, but we're ready whenever.
This is an expansion for your league.
Yeah, it's an expansion. We're ready whenever a city's ready. The school district, whatever is ready. We're ready to go. We are in the process of putting together ownership group and all that to get ready to go. Once we are, once the lease is approved, and then we have to get, that ownership group has to get approval from the league as well. But yeah, it just pushes it down, obviously, a year. And then kind of going back to the community stuff, though, we share facilities everywhere we are. We just finished our 31st season. We're in small communities like Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, Wilmer, Minnesota, all the way to like Madison, Wisconsin, where Madison draws 6,000 fans a game. It's wild. Bismarck, North Dakota, they do like 1,900. But it's a big deal. In these cities that have a Northwoods League team, we have about 100 guys that get drafted every year. We've had over 370 guys go on to play Major League Baseball. Guys like Chris Sale, Curtis Granderson, Pete Alonso. We had 3 guys a couple weekends ago debut on the same day in Major League Baseball. So the baseball is elite. It's become that, but it's more about the entertainment and the family stuff that we can do and being in the community. From the host family programs that we have, to being in the school districts, just everything we do, because we're not just here to play 36 games and then close up and go away. We're here in the community all year round. We hire full-time staff that'll be at that office 2 year round too, so somebody's there too every day. So we're utilizing it for our games. Plus, we only played 2.5 months, so it's quick. It's 72 games in 76 days. They play every day. They go on buses. They're staying in hotels and all that. But then the team has a lot of opportunity over those other months too to do like festivals or concerts or different things like that. Our team in Kalamazoo, they have a whole separate kind of entity that runs different festivals. They do a mac and cheese festival. They do a donut beer festival. They run the concessions for Western Michigan. So the league has really turned into a big kind of marketing opportunity, and we stretch from now Michigan to North Dakota. We're up in Canada. We have 26 teams, but yeah, we're in the community and we're here all the time.
If I could just add or ask, in being in the community, I simply assume that you all also, being our partners, if this is the will of the board, would work with our local high school and some of our local little leagues and give them unique experiences that other places aren't providing.
Yeah, we do all that stuff from the little league nights to having the schools out for day games, things like that. We would want to partner with everybody that we can partner with. That's just how we operate. We are a true community partner, and it's, like I said, it's 31 years of it. I work at the league office. I've been in the league office since 2012. I've worked for 3 different baseball teams before that, but this is it for me. I'm not going anywhere just because we're treated really well too in the league office. Our chairman, Dick Raditz, and his wife Kathy own the league. We're very well taken care of, and everything that the league makes, we put back into the teams too to help with some of the things that they want to do. We have a Northwoods League Foundation too that helps to improve ballparks. We give out grants to the teams to put in handicap accessible seating in their ballparks. It's one of the things that the foundation does. So we've done that in a few ballparks over the last few years. But yeah, we're here. We're in the community, and it's not just a few games and then see us. So it's very different.
I think we have Tony Cross via conference call.
You're on.
No, he needs to turn that on.
Sorry.
I have to mute this computer.
Oh, you have to mute your computer, and then you'll be good.
On the top of the corner.
Up in the corner.
Just mute us. That just mute
There
us.
you go. There you go.
I think that's
Okay.
up there.
He'll drop it back in.
You can put them on there. Like
I think John raises a point that I don't want to address. I don't want to not give due attention to, but if there's a disparity in facilities that exist, underutilizing the preferred facility is not in any way minimizing your Title IX concerns. I think what you have to recognize is that we have to keep those concerns in the forefront, but denying the ability to maximize the usage of McBride in this context and arguably generate revenues that, if not positive in the end, will at least offset any type of cost burden that the facility itself imposes that could arguably then be a hindrance to examining opportunities, Title IX related for female sports. As Brad said, it just doesn't make sense. I think it's an issue that we have to keep in front of us. We're waiting on a Title IX audit. It's not an end-all, be-all with facilities per se. It's overall opportunities. So I don't want to go through that concern, but I do believe, and I feel very comfortable that this is a proper way to go forward and return McBride to what it was, not just at one time for RCS, but for the entire community. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Attorney Cross.
I just want to weigh in. I'm excited. I'm so excited when I heard about this because I sat in an executive session well over a year ago with the board when we were deciding whether we wanted to purchase McBride or not. And what we talked about was, the money, because, we want money to go towards student achievement, and that's important. But we also recognize that students' involvement in sports is important and our community is important. And we talked about how are we going to pay for it? What's it going to cost? And how can we keep it a community facility? And to me, having a collegiate team, come in is exciting because it brings in revenue. It brings in revenue, and hearing all the opportunity for our students to engage in it in our community, still be a part of it. I mean, I'm over the top excited. I mean, thank you, the three of you for putting this together. I think I'm in real estate. There's no better time than the current time. We hear that, could we delay a year? We could delay a year, but that doesn't mean, right now we're hearing him say, yes, I may be able to, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen. We may pass up this opportunity and not have it back. I agree. I want the softball fields to be amped up, and we have work to do in, lots of different regards. But this just seems like a win for our community. So I'm super excited.
I just reply to Ron. I don't think I was meaning we diminish baseball. I think we're dealing with a bond fund where we have money available that we're talking about athletics. If softball, while no perfect solution, if McBride needs to be turfed so it can be a dual use facility, we actually have resources that could be pumped into that, and that could be done in a fairly quick manner. And I think, those are just things that I think need worked out before we go into a lease agreement. I think if we decide, again, not perfect, the best way to have equal opportunity for boys and girls at RCS is to have both softball and baseball play at McBride Field. And the way to do that is through a turfed field. I think that's a reasonable conclusion. And if we need another year before we have minor league baseball come in, so be it. No offense to the Northwood, but I think we need to kind of work through those thoughts first. I think it's a good idea. I just see that softball field and we don't even mention the girls. And we talk, that comes before that's our responsibility. Our student athletes, community comes second, unfortunately. And so I'd like to have those details worked out because you don't even have to get out of a car to see that the opportunity is not the same.
We're not saying that we're not turfing. We're not saying it can't be turfed. If they come in, we can turf next year. If it's in the process, that's all can be done, guys.
Yeah.
We're not locked into the saying 3 years you can't touch it.
No.
It's not. No. And the fact that I just wanted to cry a little tear when he just said they're going to have this thing staffed all year round. That means we're going to have somebody there take an eye on this thing. So if something happens in the middle of winter when we're not down there, we get a phone call. Hey, did you know this is going on? No, thanks for telling us. And it makes the maintenance of it so much easier. you know how it is. When you leave your property and something happens, you don't come home for a week. The damage is way worse than if you would have caught it right away. That's our little caveat to this. Even is me being selfish on the facility side of it. It gives us another eye down there. But in no way does this say we can't turf, we can't move on with our facilities plans. All that can still be worked through here. This just gives us somebody who is coming in with a team to use the facilities, paying us for the facilities. And I see absolutely no negatives on this.
Member Selesky has.
And I just have a couple questions. And I guess first off, for turf, grass, you don't care.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah, a lot of our ballparks are going to turf.
Okay.
Grass is great. You know, it's traditional. The guys like playing on grass, but the turf now is so good too. But yeah, and just going to that point, Madison in our league, right before the season this year, I think like in May, before the season, April, May, they turfed their infield right before the season. So it can be done. If we have a lease, it doesn't matter. If you need to turf the field, turf the field. We can play on it. And we've even told our teams that currently have turf for baseball that are doing softball that after this next season, they have to take their mounds out to make sure that they have removable mounds, because right now they're playing with the mound back there, because not all of them are built that way, but we want to get rid of the mounds too.
And my concern and delay was not a year, but that we just got this a week ago. It would be just 1 month. We looked at a potential facility plan out there that limits the parking to 75 spots, and that's going to be a problem for what you're looking at. If there's 75 parking spots out there, and that's a problem even potentially for our own games.
Sure. Yeah, parking is always a thing to look at, and if a facility has it, that's great. You know, and then if the neighborhood allows it, that's great too. Like our team in Wausau, they're in a neighborhood. They're like the Wrigley, I guess they've called them up in Northwoods League, but it's all street parking. They don't have parking lot at all.
Okay.
So.
And that was my concern, is we're still in these discussions of where we're going to be with McBride.
Yeah.
And I think some of those decisions can be made fairly quickly, but does delaying a month impact your timeline?
It does for next season, just because if we don't know for another month, it's gonna, because we're trying to build a schedule too for next year.
Okay.
And if we're delayed that far, you know, even if we could get on the schedule, the team has to be able to come in and
There's
build
a lot of
and bring in
dominoes
staff,
that have
and
to fall. I get
they
it.
got to do name the team. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into a team for sure on the business side.
Okay. And if we're potentially adding another sport within those grounds where there's going to be construction going on next year, is that something that it wouldn't be on the field, obviously, but it would be adjacent or close? Is that something, even with a team playing there, you guys can work with?
What do you mean exactly?
So we had a discussion 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, 15th, and we're potentially putting tennis courts in the area on the side near the swimming pool area. So that area would be construction zone essentially. So is that things that you can work with
I don't
the
think
team?
that affects the ballpark or anything around there.
It's going to affect parking for sure.
Yeah, the parking part, but if people, you know, understand that and know what's going on, it doesn't affect our operation or whatever. So yeah, we're used to that stuff happening. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
And I also know that to piggyback on, he's not here to count that, is it? To add to what Mr. Selesky has referenced, I know during that conversation on the 15th, we also had talked about some potential partnering with our city officials and finding out whether or not some of the other parking options. I know we have a parking lot there at the municipal pool, as well as the Little League Optimist Field has up to parking. There may be some opportunity to expand some partnerships with the city as well.
And I think it's good to have the conversation so this isn't a surprise to
Oh, absolutely.
you guys also.
Absolutely. Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Those were my concerns.
No, this has been very helpful because, I mean, the questions that were kind of emailed back and forth, they're all coming out, in discussions. So I know personally, I was like, that's a good question. That's a good question, so it's good to hear what the answers are. Thank you guys.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
I'm excited to bring baseball back to that whole water during the summer. Because right now, just, the little leagues going on full bore, but it'd be great to have that whole just baseball.
Thank you.
Softball.
And softball.
I'm not saying softball.
Don't say it. I mean, when you make a comment like that.
Okay, well, to stay just back on the topic here, we have a
Thank you,
motion on the
Mr.
table and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Questions or
Thank you.
comments?
For softball down
Thank you.
So
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, vote passes 6-0.
And I abstained.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Didn't. Okay, so vote passes 5-0 and Weber abstains.
I mean, I just want to make the comment, like my concerns aren't really nothing on quickly. It's about us having a 5-hour work session and this not being mentioned at all. As we talked about parking in the courts, and it just would have been a nice to know, right? Like, this, I think any of us want to cash the McBride property. So that makes me extremely frustrated, and maybe we would come up with something else or thought differently. So that's what I don't like about all of this.
So as much heads up as possible.
Well, obviously, this was being floated around before our working session.
It takes away
So-
from the holistic approach that is supposedly.
Yeah,
working.
so we're sitting here trying to put so much thought and care into it, and it just would have been nice to know.
I think that can be, yeah.
Okay, next action item 6.04, update to non-certified salary schedule. I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Second by member Zaleski. Questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. Next, we will move on to our policy review and update. The first policy is policy 1422.01, the drug-free workplace. Second reading and approval.
Move for approval.
I'll second. Motion by member Zaleski, second by member Breton. Questions or comments?
Comment. This is the one that Ron had sent a message pertaining to, saying that he was recommending perhaps tabling it until we've heard back from Neola. So I don't know if everyone else had a chance to look through that, and or if maybe Mr. Mopsit would heard back from Neola in regards to this one.
I did. I heard back from Neola, and their suggestion was to put may in instead of shall.
Okay.
So that was their suggestion, and that's what I put in this document.
Okay.
I mean, that was going to be my question on. We had so much talk about the alcohol piece of this, so I don't necessarily want to approve this because it still talks about the problem that we have. It doesn't solve our concerns. It doesn't clarify, unless we're just saying this is in and don't go tailgating and show up to a school function, right?
Well, or even have a glass of wine and show up
Mhm.
after dinner to a school function.
But also maybe that is just, I mean,
Who decides
I
how
guess that's an
much?
HR issue, right? If
Yes.
Stacy gets called and I don't know the right answer.
Yes, Mr. Mops, our Director of Human Resources, thank you, sir, for joining us.
Yeah, so that would just be up to the regular guidelines of or the regular following of discipline of anybody that has violated any kind of policies. So I'm sure it wouldn't be it'd probably be up to the superintendent if it's administrator. But what this does is protects the school district if somebody does show up and they're intoxicated in any way. Without this, I'm not sure we had that covered.
Yes. No, I definitely get it. I worry about the threshold of alcohol consumption. Because in theory, this is
and it's
seems like
different.
no tolerance.
It's different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's may there instead of shall. So it's up to the discretion of the administration of what they want to pursue.
Okay. No, I mean, I'd like to hear. I don't know what the right thing is to do with this one, or do we table it and we'll?
I'm comfortable with the way it's written because I don't think there would be a way to write it to say at what, like, how is this checked and what level is it? I think that it's give the discretion. I mean, I don't know how else it would be worded that would say, what level of that would be and who would be the one to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's probably the way it's been in the past. Is you notice that employee who's acting like they,
Mm-hmm.
and those who have just had a glass of wine would not be acting that way. And I don't know. I would kind of lean on Neola and their suggestion, kind of like that may instead of shall, so it leaves that area.
So
that's just my opinion.
The letter that was written to you, Stacy, from Ron, was basically saying that, from what I understand of Ron saying that these codes that are cited aren't exactly in line with what we're talking about here.
They don't include alcohol in it,
right?
And he also stated in there that the board could go above that and include the alcohol. When talking to Neola, they said that this really kind of protects the district in case somebody does show up intoxicated with alcohol, that they would have the opportunity to receive that discipline.
Gotcha.
This would be.
So it's above and beyond by including the alcohol.
Correct.
But it's also somewhat, we're kind of trapping ourselves too with the potential someone showing up after having wine dinner or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's what the may is, and
okay, so you feel like the may and Ron feels like the may protects us.
Well, that's what came from Neola. So
that's yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. Thank you. Unless I'd rather people.
No, it's like it's so hard but not hard at the same time.
I know. Well, it's a juxtaposition.
Yeah.
It's a true.
Yeah. Do we pick and choose who we hold accountable, or
I know. Well, that's my thought about. It's like I guess we're not in that realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like picking and choosing. If that happens, that's Mr. Mops.
Call Aaron.
Doctor. Yeah.
Feels right.
So I'm trying to go with
breathalyzer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion by Zaleski, a second by Brunton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. Next is policy 7.02. I'm sorry. Policy review 7.02, policy 2600, school accountability. This is a first reading.
Move to second reading.
second that.
Have a motion to move this to second readings. A second by Stoltz. Questions or comments? This is the one that we discussed at the work session already previously, and I think the one thing that we talked about was the change of the date from May to September for those plans.
Mr. Motts, welcome back, sir.
Sorry, I wasn't invited.
No,
You might as well stay up here.
There's one other thing that we probably should change on this prior to second reading, and that is after letter C, the paragraph that starts the school committee may modify, and that should, instead of director, that should be the assistant superintendent instead of director there, and so we can make that change for second reading.
So Zaleski, do you want to change your motion to include that change as well?
Probably president of the board. What is that? Says director of the board.
So to the director for board approval.
To the
Recommended plan to the director for board approval.
Sure.
So it'd be the recommended plan to the assistant superintendent for board approval. But I mean, I can go ahead and make that change for your second reading. I'm not sure you have to adjust your motion. I think you're on.
Yeah, it's just we're just moving it to second reading.
Mentioned twice in this.
Okay, I'll change the other place too. I'll do a finer reading of that.
Okay.
For that.
We're just moving it to second reading.
Okay.
Good. I'll make those changes for second reading.
Okay.
If this passes it.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to move the school accountability policy to a second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. Next is policy 144.2, board member ethics, first reading.
I move that we move policy 144.2 to second reading.
Second.
I have a motion by member Stoltz, second by member Zaleski. Questions and comments?
I don't think this is a policy. I think this could be included in our board member information, but I don't know why we're moving it forward as a policy. And I mean, we already say we abide by ASBA and their bylaws, I believe. So why we've created this is a new policy, I believe. Why we've created a new policy specifically as board member ethics that it's not enforceable. But I just think it's good guidelines. I think it's nothing important, but I think it would go in our board information packet rather than policy.
Stacy, how long have we had this board ethics policy? Do you have any history on that?
I don't have any history right now. I can look it up real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I went through after we talked about this in the working session. So I think there's stuff that falls under board member ethics in here, and then there is stuff that is more guidelines that has nothing to do with ethics. So, I mean, for me, I'd wanna, if we want ethics, right, this first little section seems okay, but then there's a lot of things that come up where, insisting that all school business transactions be an open, ethical, and above board basis. And it's like, well, we try to do that, but it's like insisting is not, that's not something that would fall under board member ethics, right? Like that's how to be a good board member.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think the information is of value. I just don't believe it's policy.
yeah. No, I kind of agree with that. Like all of these things with, talks about like provide adequate safeguards. Well, we don't necessarily provide policies. It doesn't make sense on some of the terminology they've used where, how do we create safeguards around
good ethics, and we've made it a policy, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So I just would want to pare this down and separate it out, or keep it under like board guidelines in our board book.
Do we have board guidelines? I think everything's under policy, I believe.
Well, I was thinking more of like the ISBA, like when you come in.
We had a board beliefs. I think that's a separate document.
So maybe this.
There are board documents that aren't policies.
Okay.
I don't know where
I
they're.
haven't seen them.
I guess
In my
Cindy maybe
time.
has them.
If it's policy, then it's front and center. And we're not going, we don't know.
We did have this policy prior to, and it references once again the Indiana School Boards Association. So they must have that as a suggestion that they would give out before boards stood up.
And so, how do you have a history? Like, how long have we had? Other than we had it before the.
I believe it was last.
It was grouped together. It was originally adopted in 2015 and then revised in 2017.
So we've had it since then.
We've had it 10 years.
Okay, 10 years. So my point of view, I guess, is that we are board members. We need to be held up to high standards, just like we do in our policy for administration, for our staff members, for I'm fine. I mean, there may be a few word changes. I would agree with that, with the insisting, but my opinion is that it's good to have this as a policy so that we are held to the same standard or high standards that's recommended by ISBA.
Speaking of ISBA, if I may, just President Department of Trustees, just reading through some of the language found within the policy, I guess, goes back to what we learned at the conference earlier this week and what continued to be echoed. But the basic function of the board is policy making, not administrative responsibility, learning to discriminate intelligently between such functions, refusing to play politics, representing at all times the entire school community, accepting the responsibility of becoming well informed concerning the duties of the board member and the appropriate function of the school board, recognizing integrity. I mean, all these things earlier this week at the ISBA annual conference were repeated, stated, keynoted, and referenced as the crux of what a board of governance should be and for the efficiency, effectiveness, and as is mentioned in bullet A, being student and children first is something that again I think is highly supported and well supported across the state and for that matter across the country. So.
No, I mean I definitely agree with that. I just think because some of it's good and it makes sense, we shouldn't approve it because some of it's stuff.
You shouldn't put bad policy forward.
Well, I just like, for example, vigorously seeking adequate financial support for the schools. Like, well, A, that's not an ethic. B, like, how do we vigorously, like, there's just like no reference back to some of this. So, like, that's why I totally agree with the statements that we really need to uphold. There's just a lot here that doesn't.
If I also may to add to that point of clarity that this particularly is referencing, going back to the policy working group that we all took part in, what we would do with such policy. And I know Mr. Mouse remembers those days, and it's exciting to revisit such. But we would go through it and maybe just line by line, read the lines and see what would be agreeable upon and what would not. And I'm not sure if that's something that we want to emphasize with this policy, because I think initially when we thought about policy review in a open public forum, we had talked about such a practice, and so I don't know if we want to exercise
I think
that.
that's a great idea.
I do, because also it references that we shall maintain a safe and healthy environment for students. Yeah, absolutely. It references policy 8330 about confidentiality of students and records, but it doesn't mention like staff. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it should. I think it would have the line also of maintaining.
Well, let's start with the first. Let's get to that one. And yes, let's add to. Okay, so we'll just start with the first line. Thinking always in terms of children first. Does anyone? I'm just gonna go through these, and if anyone.
I would say I agree with A through G of the first section.
Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't agree with A through G? Okay.
We're not gonna.
Well, that's what we're here to do, though, to discuss and hear everyone's ideas.
I think Dr. Wright said this should be at a working group. to go through this.
Well,
I mean, we're going to go through 3 pages line by line.
That's not what I heard him say. I heard him say that we were gonna be doing it like she's trying to lead us through. Is that what you were saying? Which one were you trying to say?
I recall it at one particular time, it was decided upon that the policy review would mimic what was occurring in working.
Yes.
And
What we
in
used-
working group, this is what we would do. We go through one.
and some of the policies will work through in the business meeting and some in the work session, just so we can, hear and we can discuss in an open forum. So A through G, is there anyone opposed or make note? I mean, something, oops. Of this prior to kind of look through. Okay, the second section, A through G, which that kind of gives examples of respecting our relationship with other members of the board. So that's kind of board to board member ethics. Okay, the next section would be the ethics of having our relationship with the superintendent of schools and his cabinet or her cabinet. That would be A through G.
Yeah, I think, I don't think B should be in this statement. I think that talks about the giving the superintendent full administrative authority. I do think that it talks about that in a couple of our other policies.
It talks about it in several, yeah.
So to me, it just seems too overarching, which is my word of the day, to be in here. Right, it just creates like this blanket, and
I guess I want to know what other policies, so I can understand that, because this is talking in relation to board members and this. If the other policies are doing that, then I'd be in favor.
It's
Kristen, I need to be excused.
Okay.
So, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John.
May I read the item B there?
Sure.
That-
Yes,
that-
yes, please do.
Just so that I can, my interpretation, I think, may be different. Where it references giving the superintendent full administrative authority for properly discharging his or her professional duties, and also by holding him or her responsible for accepting results. Are we to interpret, and you know what, I think Attorney Cross law, because I would love to know, are we to interpret her or his professional duties is what her or him would have full administrative authority. Not so much giving the superintendent carte blanche to rule like that of a monarch, but over the professional duties, almost very similar to what Ms. Pearson just referenced during the public commentary when she identified policy and turned to me and stated, the superintendent will hold the superintendent accountable for your policy for what it is the superintendent is supposed to be doing. And so I guess I'm curious to know, and we'll have to ask Attorney Cross if I'm interpreting this correctly, that no, I won't be operating like a king or for a female superintendent.
Yeah.
But just over the responsibilities and what this role calls for, which is set identified by the board.
It was in the policy previous to that same line was.
no, and I definitely get that. When I look at policies, it's not about like the players in place at the time, right? Because you want to trust who is in place at the time, but you also have to protect when we're long gone. Someone taking, to me, that statement could just be interpreted. And I know it's on, like employment of like your cabinet. That is referenced. So to me, like that's different, right? Because it's in that policy, and this is, anyway. And that's one I don't know why that would be under board member ethics, because that's not us. Ethics is behavior and how we're supposed to present ourselves. And
our behavior is giving him the authority to do his job.
But that's a guideline. That's not a behavior. A behavior is being a, elected official, right? We're protecting children, giving him authority to discharge is. Well, that's what I'm saying. ethics and guidelines are two completely different things, right? Ethics is like our personal behavior,
Right.
and to me, this is like our professional task that we should. Someone is saying you should be doing this and giving people like there's a separation on that.
And I believe what Mr. Pickering is referencing, and again, I know Attorney Cross would be able to truly clarify. And there's validity with your levels as far as this potentially giving a guideline and not so much. However, I think in looking at the language that's found, and it goes back to what our executive session, sitting around, which was my evaluation and goals for this particular school season. I think what this does is it safeguards, which I think that's another term that's used somewhere around it, but it safeguards me as superintendent, our cabinet, our building up leaders. It safeguards me as superintendent to fulfill my role with the utmost confidence that I will have such. And I lost my train of thought. Forgive me, but again, I really this in my interpretation says as board we draft policy. The administrative guidelines, as is I think another policy as is mentioned. Administrative guidelines are superintendent, cabinet, building up leaders, faculty, staff. I think this is just one of those safeguards that I think member President brought to. It allows us to have the autonomy to fulfill the roles that we've been trying to.
No, I get what you're saying. It doesn't belong to us.
Could we separate out?
Yes.
Like, I know, I mean, in the policy and have board ethics and then have board guidelines. And my only concern for doing that is because we have so many new members that come in. Like I've never seen the board beliefs or the board, that we may have. And if it's in our policy and we can call one of them, some of them guidelines and some of them policy and reorganize with that.
Yeah, I
work for you.
And as he was just saying that, like, okay, maybe the problem is just the board member ethics. And I don't know if we still want to go through line by line, but maybe it's like we just have to brand this or section it different. Because to me, it's, telling me how I should behave as a board member and then telling me what I should do as a board member are two just different things, and it doesn't.
What I hear you saying also is, to your point, that I think everyone would agree that, I shouldn't say that. No. But what I hear you say is that as a board member, one's behavior and one's actions are two different things. But of what is written is something that it seems that there's agreement. It's just a matter of where it's placed.
Yeah. And, just some of the terminology makes it, I'm like, I don't even know what that sentence is telling. So, but maybe we just, is this on first reading?
I was going to say, if nothing else, moving on to second reading. And I think that's something else that the board's also talked about with regard to our policy review. And which is why I think some of the others have been also concerned is to continue to allow for fluid conversation by moving it to the next reading. And that's one of the other things that Attorney Cross mentioned. They could go reading 9, 10, 11.
So we were going to use some of the working sessions. Going to be the second one of the month.
Yes.
With October and November, we don't. Well, December also, I guess.
So
We don't have a.
Yeah, with the winter recess.
If we wait and just put this on pause till January, we have a working session in January on policy. Have a discussion at a working group at that point. I mean, does this policy really change the world?
Well, that's a great question. I almost said Mr. Mops. Mr. Mops. Of what I understand regarding not only this policy, but many of our policies, they've already been board approved. We're just bringing them back for review. So this is already in place, which allows us to then revisit it as Member Zaleski is referencing.
We brought it to the working,
yes,
the working meeting session that we had. I believe it was in August.
Yes. For example,
and then you asked to review it again.
Yes.
So to bring it back.
Yes.
My concern is that we're gonna forget what we, is it possible if Kim and I worked together on this and then came up with using this, but reorganized with she and I, and then we could go ahead and move this to a second reading and we'll come back to it. And then we could present it to the whole, like send it by email and then we can bring it back to conversation.
And that's essentially the working group model, and I'm fine with that.
So then we can just keep moving with this.
It's a-
And this one, the ones I think that need more work and reorganization.
And to Member Zalewski's point, and as Mr. Mops confirmed, with this being with all our policies ideally being board approved and passed, we're still held accountable.
Right.
To what's on this
Yes.
paper, as well as some of the other policies that we'll be reviewing.
Great, so there I have a motion by Member Stoltz, and a motion by Member Zaleski to move this to second reading. Is that what the motion was?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then a suggestion, Austin, you missed the suggestion
Oh.
that, Krista,
Just watch the video.
Kristen and Kim are gonna, double down basically on this particular policy and kind of get some ideas together before we look at it for second reading, or, so we'd be moving it to second reading, sorry, and then they'd be presenting what they come up with, and then we can rehash it again.
Thank you, Mr. Mops. You may want to stand there though.
Yeah, we got one more.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Vote passes 5-0. Okay. Next would be policy 5136, the personal communication devices, first reading.
Make a motion to move to second reading.
Motion from Zaleski, a second by Stoltz. Questions or comments?
If I may, to Member Zaleski's previous statement, as I also mentioned, just so that, because I think it's also a concern that we may not be in compliance with state statutes. We are in compliance with state statutes. With this policy that we currently have in place, it's the same policy we had in place last year.
We have an administrative guideline in place.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. The
We
administrative
don't
guideline.
actually have a policy in
Yes.
place.
The
We
administrative-
have an administrative guideline.
I believe that, yes, that yes, the administrative guideline is in compliance with state statute. And that's the as far as the personal communication devices are not being utilized during instruction.
Okay.
Which is what the state statute calls for. So we don't have the policy in place, but yes, our guidelines keep us consistent with what the policy, what the state statute calls for. So yeah.
So this is a policy that we discussed at the work session and quite a lengthy discussion about and what further and right now we're presented with what we had in the past. And we've discussed changes and we know we need to make some changes to be compliant. But we've also discussed other changes.
There was a whole bunch of discussion about this policy. The snitch policy part of it is concerning. And I would like to see that stricken from the policy.
Yeah, I think we discussed that and I think we're on board with that.
I'm not sure how that's enforceable.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the principals, if they're talking to staff and teachers, they can, communicate what they expect from the adults. But this says yes, person, correct. I don't know. So I don't know if we would necessarily want.
Are you saying, like, we would say a staff member?
Well, I at first I thought that, and I was like, I think we'd leave it out
Altogether?
because unless you guys think differently, I feel like a building leader would be communicating with the teachers and staff, but they would have that expectation.
What is the current, Dr. Wright, what is the current expectation? Is that clearly stated? Okay, if a staff member, para, a teacher, whoever discovers a student using a person or using their cell phone, are they required to report it? Yes or no?
I'm going to lean on assistant superintendent.
Or maybe it's different in
Sam
every
Pritchard.
building.
Ideally, as far as reporting,
Mhm.
I believe right now the protocols are for students to comply with the redirection of the classroom teacher as far as reporting it. Mr. Pritchard, I'm not sure if such a
students or staff
practice is in place.
Staff, because we don't want the student staff to snitch on each other,
Right.
But what is the current practice of staff? Are the admin leaders saying, hey, across the board, if you find a student and he or she has a cell phone out, are they supposed to be reported?
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so is that also, Mrs. Markward, at the elementary level also, or is that just at the high school or?
I would say that at the elementary level, yeah, it's not an issue.
It's not an issue.
It's not.
Away from.
I know they're away for the day, but again, the policy doesn't say that. We're just wanting to make sure we're consistent, I guess.
Because this says kind of like if a teacher finds a student with a phone, let's say during the class, then the teacher needs to report that to the principal. Is that what's happening?
Yes, they have steps in place. So it's progressive discipline, just like anything else. So there's
Okay.
progression to that. So they can institute a warning to that student, put it away because our policy is away for the day. They can do that depending on the context, what's going on in the classroom at the time, and the egregiousness and the reaction of the student. They can take the cell phone and give it back to the student at the end of that period, or they can take the cell phone, turn it into administration at the office, at which time a parent is notified and then the parent gets it or the student can have it back at the end of the day. It's kind of been the practice that I've seen happening, at least at the middle school anyways.
It sounds to me like that sentence just needs to be removed because in some cases you don't report it to the principal. Yes, and I think it'd be the expectations the principal sets for the teacher in the building.
This one's always progressive.
Right.
You always want it to be progressive, so that's just I like it.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Is everyone
in my
good
opinion.
with that? Just eliminate that sentence. Look at us making progress. All right.
Then there was discussion that this was away for the day 3 through 12, and we've had some discussions that may make some sense on 3 through 8, like being able to give the principal or administrator in the high school some discretion for passing periods and lunches.
Yeah, I think when we were looking at that, it was, pre-K through 8, away for the day. I think they already have that policy, right? And then 9 through 12, obviously they can't have it during instructional time, but yes, using it during passing periods, lunch, after school, at the discretion of the principal, but then, Dr. Wright having the ability to work with Ms. Wolfe on your expectations of if there's X amount of referrals for cell phone usage, right? It gets, potentially gets pushed away for the day. Or they can earn that privilege back it gives the kids incentive. It gives a little control to the high school. It gives you some control to kind of hold them accountable. Like, hey, teachers, kids, the high school, this is somewhat of a privilege to have it during certain times of the day. So that was I
like that.
Just giving it gives everyone a little piece of
It sounds like the
Yeah.
superintendent works with the high school principal to develop the K through 12 cell phone plan. Knowing it's still, I mean, it's always for everyone, it's gone during the instructional hours.
But you could say, have a report like, hey, this month, how many cell phones do you guys have to take away? I don't want to deter them from reporting by any means, but that gives you control if that's how you saw fit to manage that.
And I believe to follow up with figure his reference, um, collectively, since I've assumed this role, has been the focus. You all heard me say. I think it was even echoed a few weeks ago as far as empowering our building our leaders to arrive at judgment calls and decisions that they feel is in best for their respective buildings based on data and based on findings. I believe language or verbiage that would permit our building level leaders an opportunity to use the term supersede or arrive at such a conclusion. What I hear you saying this evening is it's in conjunction, we work together. That's something that we naturally already do. My premise and what I alluded to in the past is, and speaking with the fellow superintendents from around the state and having this conversation earlier this week at the house, we'd be very unique and more than likely, and again, you never say never, but I think we'd probably be one of the only corporations in the state that would have such verbiage that would call for a building level leader, or in this reference, our high school principal having the autonomy to arrive at such a conclusion. What I do say is it's in conjunction. And it's which everything that I've always done and always will do is as such, but putting it in verbiage and narrative for my successor over 30 years from now. I think that was one of the things Mr. Weber also alluded to, just being cognizant of such. But ideally, we're going to work with all of our building leaders. And it may come to the point where we look at the pre-K through 8 practice, and as long as we're in compliance with state statute and following our policies, we'll make it work for sure.
Yeah.
And
I was, thinking about it with my high schooler. What will make him comply is, he would never want to be the one that got in trouble, got them taken away for the whole school. So that's what I'm affected with. So giving the kids something to sort of work towards, but I mean, there might be a lot of referrals and they get taken away, and that's just
what. Without a doubt, and it's just, I'll conclude with this, and it follows up on what you're referencing. Again, I wouldn't say we'd be the only, because I can't speak to it because I haven't done my homework, but I know that as of this juncture, I'm not sure we'll find policy and verbiage within school policy across the state that would allow a building leader to arrive at such initial conclusions without the approval of the city superintendent and or.
And I think that's what she's saying is, so maybe you work together, so both of you have to.
You're still putting in a threshold. You're still.
It did make me think from a teacher's point of view, that if it's much easier for me, a teacher, to manage no cell phones in my class, I don't have to deal with it, than having a sheet of, okay, you got 4 referrals, you got your cell phone, you don't. That's what entered my mind for a minute. If it was just no cell phones, then it's okay, I get that. That would be very easy management for me when I already have so many things I'm managing. And now I'm going to figure out who gets it in the hallway, and do they have it gone? I don't know, because they got it taken away because of referrals in another class, but they have it in the hallway, and I'm not sure. That's gonna be hard to manage. But I love the fact you work with the high school. You both have to agree to the terms of it to work together. So whatever it may be, whether they're away for the day or whether they're not, or whether they're except of course during instructional time, you work it out with some collaboration.
And
I like that idea.
To add to what you referenced, I know in speaking with our principals at the pre-K through 8 level, one of the reports that we have gotten from their classroom educators is the fact that they do appreciate the fact that the focus is on student achievement and education.
I'm wondering with this policy, or is maybe Kim and I already gonna get together on the other one?
Go ahead.
I've already sent one that I kind of thought from another school corporation that maybe she and I can commingle and send.
And that's what I was going to suggest. My question was, are there any other overarching major pieces so that those are all checked, and then it's you two can work toward the verbiage of it. I didn't have anything else.
I'm assuming we agree that during after-school activities, then students can have personal communication.
And I think on the
devices.
buses, it's our, I mean, they've got their policies, which, you know, like, I know the kids, bus drivers don't mess around. You're like, don't talk on your phone.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
And then as far as these personal communication devices, are we talking cell phones, smartwatches, iPad, like where are we drawing the line here, or?
What we're hearing from teachers is that the ear devices,
Oh,
the earphones,
yeah,
the earbuds,
the
I think
earbuds.
the students call them, are major.
And I mean, I think that stuff just needs to be shut down, right? Like, you take them out. But that's.
It's just an extension of the phone.
No.
Okay.
PCDs are defined in bylaw 0100. Also.
Thank you, Mr. Mox. Appreciate your presence, sir.
So we have a motion and a second to move this to a second reading with the knowledge that Kim and I will be getting together to put something together. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Vote passes 5-0. We are ready for highlights and discussion. The school improvement plans. So we have received these prior, and these plans. And Dr. Wright, is anyone coming to discuss them, or just?
At this juncture, you all have reviewed them and have had opportunity to pose questions prior to. They have been made public. There is not necessarily an action that is to be taken. It's more informational at this juncture, but we're definitely doing all that we are required and obligated to do. Our proverbial T's and metaphor guys, documents, metaphor guys. It's all come together. So you have those pictures for you to review.
Great, appreciate the time that it takes to put these together, and all of those teachers and administrators and support staff and who sit on these committees to help develop these. It takes a lot of time, so appreciate that. Any other comments or? Okay, great. We will move on then to our public.
Before we get to
yes,
public hearing,
also
I just
discussions.
I assume Dr. Ray, and I apologize. The gentleman from Northwood, I just drew a blank on your name. I apologize. That we're going to be working, because there is a portion of that agreement that deals with alcohol sales on premises. And as we've gotten through these policies, it makes me think we still have to comply with the alcohol policy with Northwood. So there's, I assume Karen, I don't know, is going to be working in conjunction, so we get that information in a timely manner once we get an owner and all that other stuff. So I know that's going to be later on. I just don't want it to get lost.
It's not gonna get lost. So
I knew it would, but
it's not gonna. We
we, as a part of the, and that's why Ron addressed portions of that in
Yeah.
the lease, so that everything just follows the normal policy on that.
Yeah.
And it's just the normal, paperwork on that will come back and it'll just be for the season and then we'll take care of that. So,
Right.
yeah, but we had to start here first.
I understand.
Yeah. So, but yes, that will come, hopefully probably like, winter or spring.
Yeah,
and it'll have to
exactly.
be before
No,
season.
no biggie. It was
Oh, yeah.
my ADD kicking in and train
Yeah.
of thought.
I
That's
did
not
think suggested that we do a one-time approval for the entire season. We as a board collectively had said we did not want to do that just recently. So I think we should reopen that conversation because that was something that Mr. Dingworth at the Art Museum said he would appreciate, you know, if we were able to do that for community partners. Obviously, this would be the same kind of situation. So
Yeah.
I thought I'm personally open to rediscussing
Yeah,
that.
and I think we could just decide if it's per year or if it's, because I think he's also asking for maybe longer than a year. It's just for events that they have. So, you know, I do think it warrants that conversation from this perspective of, you know, because that could also help the league with not having to do approvals every year as well.
Right.
However, one thing to note is as you have those conversations, because it does require that licensure as being a part of it. Anytime a licensure would expire and a new one would be, you would expect that would have to
That
come
would have to,
back. So I think that that's very worthwhile conversation as we look at for sure.
Yeah.
This is also a good time for other board member discussion, so I was going to mention a few items that board member Stoltz, board member Stevens, Dr. Wright and I spent the last few days at the ISBA conference. I have a long list of notes and I'm going to really summarize them because of time constraints. It was a great session. It was great to go to. For me personally, I was able to attend some sessions. One of them, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. What does financial oversight look like? I went to a board president's roundtable breakfast where it was great to connect to board presidents around the state. Probably at least 100 there, and was able to talk to a lot of them. Also went to a session called Using iRead in the Road to Success. We had a general session with Dr. Katie Jenner, Indiana Secretary of Education, and which is very positive. Her message was we need to be the positive, as board members, we need to be the positive ones in our corporation. I really love that. That resonated with me. Jennifer McCormick and Mike Braun both had kind of a Q&A. They're both running for governor, so it was nice to be able to hear both sides of the coin there and hear from both of them. So that was for the ISBA conference, and then also I was able to spend in the last couple of weeks a couple of days volunteering at Vail. My membership, my board membership at every child can read, and that was just always a great experience going to Vail and working with the kindergartners there. So. Other board discussion.
Well, I can carry on the
Yes.
ISBA. Okay, so I got to go to legislation issues for capital projects. Fun times. All right, and they were talking about just risk allocation and some of the key factors in deciding which building model to use with a capital project. And so, of course, I was thinking, what would Ms. Scalp say in all of these conversations? As well as some of our board members. And the one that they were, they gave us lots of different models, like, oh, you can use this model. But the one that kind of was highlighted in my mind was the build, operate, transfer, BOT. It's being used for the first time in Martinsville. And the basic concept is you partner with a developer, such as a construction firm or a design firm, like an LWC probably, right? That kind of concept. And once they win the RFP, they can build privately. And then the developer actually owns that project through the construction, and then the school buys it. And the biggest benefit, from what I understand, is it speeds things up. So I was intrigued and just kind of wondering, okay, is this something that we're going to want to look at some point? So it's brand new, so to speak. So that was fun. The next one I went to, let's see,
it was the threat assessment. Dr. Wright, you were in that one as well. Effective threat assessment. Obviously, that was very timely with everything that we went through right up until the day we left, it seemed. So the number one thing, and this was from the federal approach, which I thought was interesting. So it wasn't just like, oh, what do we do here in Richmond? It was, okay, federally speaking, what do they recommend? So across the country. And the number one thing I kept hearing was build relationships. The building of relationships is super key in preventing, which I felt like affirmed our decision to have our own police and to have those people in the building day in, day out, really making a difference in these kids' lives by saying, hey, Bobby, why are you so upset today? Or, and just that's preventative. So got a lot out of that. And then maybe one of my favorites was modern youth apprenticeships. So that one was just talking about the model that they have in Switzerland, and they've gone several times over abroad to see like what does this look like in action. It's basically where these kids are in the workforce, in the workplace, 3 or 4 times a week, and then at school once or twice. So it was very different looking than what we're seeing. And one of the things that stood out to me was how they were saying like a 16-year-old kid is going to act much differently amongst other 16-year-old kids versus amongst adults in a workplace environment, and just what the kids are rising to the occasion, so to speak. And so I just thought there's a lot of potential there. They have just apprenticeship academies basically that they're putting together across the state of Indiana that to me seemed like they have a ton of potential. So those were kind of the fun different sessions that I enjoyed. So I've got more notes, but I'll spare you all.
Right. I also just shared just on Monday I too attended the student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. On Monday I followed up with great on their behalf why school boards fail, how yours can become effective, and of those two, I think the major takeaway was that it was stated what happens in the boardroom is echoed in the classroom. What happened in the boardroom was echoed in the classroom. I'll come back to that. On Monday, the last session I attended was developing and implementing an effective threat assessment to Mrs. Stoll's point. On Tuesday, I then attended the Using iRead to the road to success, and follow up with what is authentic community engagement by Mr. Steve Horton, who's been working closely with our board. But just which you all stated, and I know Member Stevens also alluded to it. It resonated with me because oftentimes superintendents, the public perception is that, and I think we just alluded to this, that we are like that of monarchs, that we are queens and kings, and though at times is the public informed or aware of, it really starts with the board of governance, which going back to even our conversation about board ethics, it starts with our board. And being as healthy as one can be so as to have a healthy organization. And then in closing, policy, procedures, and purpose, the 3 Ps. The 1 P that they had stressed should be removed and never intertwined is politics. And so, because it takes away from student achievement and student centeredness. And so it was a great conference. Always learn a lot. And
I will say, if you guys could see Dr. Wright, was there 3 people you didn't know there, or maybe 2? It was amazing. We're like, okay.
There's a few folks
Everybody knows Dr. Wright.
No.
And spoke highly of them.
Yes. Yes.
Well, they know Richmond. They know Richmond. That's what it is.
Really? Because they didn't know us. or even Aaron, and Aaron's pretty well known.
So moving on.
It was good.
Anything other under discussion? I noticed a representative from Sagil was here. Appreciate that. Just wanted to recognize you. So, and I know we
Mr.
worked
John
with you.
McHugh.
Yes, on our last work session. So, okay. So at this time, I'm going to suspend the meeting of the Board of School Trustees, and I'm going to declare the public hearing open. The purpose of this hearing is to offer the public an opportunity for comments and questions regarding the additional appropriations. Melissa Spofford, the Director of Finance, will now be presenting information.
And President, if I can also reference that while our Director of Finance, Mrs. Swafford, is presenting, Mrs. Scott will also assist the course of the presentation.
Thank you.
We have the request for additional appropriations. Education fund, and we had $3,806,808 in the personal services and $1,775,000 in the supply line. I was looking at the August cash flow this weekend, and just wanted to point out that even if you take out the $5 million for the transfer, we would be really, really close in numbers to certified budget.
Okay. Is there anyone, it's now open to the public for comment. Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing. And I will make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, and motion from Brenton, a second from Zaleski to close the public hearing. Questions and comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Vote passes 4-0. Okay, at this time, well, we've already suspended the meeting of the Board of School Trustees, but now I'm going to open up a new public hearing. And the purpose of this hearing is to offer the public an opportunity for comments and questions regarding the budget hearing. This time, Melissa Swafford and Karen Scout will present information.
So we are yeah, the worst on the budget hearing. Our presentation is on what we have submitted into Gateway for the 2025 budget. The first slide is just the notice to taxpayers that comes out after we have submitted, and we had for rainy day $825,000. For debt service, $3,727,469. The education fund, $40,032,107, and in operations, $26,013,118. I did put the budget comparison so that you could see the difference from years to year, from year to year, because last year was, or this year, the 2024 budget was a little bit different. I wanted you to be able to compare the 2025 to previous years as well. In the 2025 budget for the education fund, we took into account salaries, benefits, classroom technology, curriculum, equipment, professional development, professional services, supplies, textbook, and travel. And in the operations fund, we took into account the administrative costs, bond project, additional costs, CPF projects, which is kind of goes along with facilities, insurance, salary and benefits, transportation, bus replacement, and utilities. And then rainy day, it's really a placeholder for our future bus purchases, and money does not actually come out of the rainy day fund.
Debt service, we have the 2018 bond, the 2020 bond, the 2021 leasehold, and the 2024 leasehold. I just wanted to provide some of the basic grant information. It's also probably in the revenue in the packet that you received that was put together.
It's a part of the Form 2 miscellaneous revenue form, so you do have to put your estimation for the Department of Education basic grant revenue. It is an estimation because you don't know for sure what legislation will bring with the next budget. So
this slide also shows you the basic tuition support for ADM. So I just wanted to capture that full screen for you that comes from the School Finance Application Center. Some of the capital projects, we have been having several discussions on the 2024 bond projects. So those are listed and as well as other routine repairs. There is the 2025 capital plan on our website. These items can be found on our website, district, and then board, and then budget, in case anybody was wondering. Those are all attached there on the website.
they have also been shared with the board and budget folder. So you should have all of this electronically. There are also printed copies for you should you choose to get one from Ms. Wellsmeyer stuff.
Just have listed the bus replacement plan, which includes 2 yellow buses, 1 yellow wheelchair bus, and 2 white wheelchair buses.
Any questions? Just for the members of our public so that they understand the next steps of the budget is October 9th. It will come to the board for final approval and then full submittal to the DLGF. Everything is available to Gateway for our public to look at right now. And the notice has been posted. So it's posted on our website, as Spofford said, and also in the DLGF Gateway. And is there as we await approval on the 9th. So, all right.
I think, well, I know as a board, we decided to put this item at the end so that we can have discussion among us about, we want, before the October 9th, so that we can discuss, is there anywhere we want to move money around? Do we feel like more money needs allocated to another area? Appreciate all the time you guys put into putting this together for us too, so that we can thoroughly understand and digest it all. Thank you.
So it's actually a public hearing at this point, right?
Yes. Is that what you meant by that statement? Oh, maybe just say that next time to me.
Yes.
Understand that better.
It's a public
Thank
hearing
you.
now.
There was some innuendo. Okay, yes, when they asked questions, asked if we had questions, I thought that, okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the first, ask for any public or anyone in the public that wants to speak regarding the budget hearing. No comments from the public? Okay. Then this public hearing will be closed. I need a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Zaleski. I'll second by Member Stoltz. Questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Vote passes 5-0. Okay, public hearing is officially closed. So now we can discuss the budget. So what questions or what thoughts do board members have regarding the budget?
So there's a significant difference between 24 and 25 $5,000 or $5 million, a little more like 4 million and some change increase in education fund operations is over $10 million difference. Man, my zeros. Sorry.
What page are you on?
Slide 3.
Slide 3. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I guess explain some of the differences, and because we don't have the detail in front of us.
Well, I know in operations, there was 5 million added for the additional costs for the bond projects.
So it was understood at the work session that there was a possibility that the board would be comfortable with expending cash balances from operations. And should that be the case, you have to have appropriation to do so. So we did work that into this number in advance so that if you determine whatever that number is, we are ready to continue with that project. The other thing with operations, there's a 4% growth quotient this year. So we did work that into the number. The other thing is that, as we have discussed with the additional appropriation, this is for appropriations. This is not for actual expenses. So actual expenses, we do cash flow monitoring so that we always know exactly where we are in cash. You have to request more appropriation, because if you don't, then you get the lesser of last year's budget or what you request. We already know that this year's budget is a little bit shy because we're having to go with an additional appropriation to make sure that we're covered. So these numbers prevent that from happening next year. One thing that we also know about operations, we'll have to cut out the circuit breaker. So these have to be high so we can get our max levy, we can get our growth quotient. We can also cover if the board decides that that cash balance is in fact what we want to use, and then we will cut the circuit breaker off of what we will actually be able to spend. So all of that is handled once the budget is approved after December by the DLGF. So that's something that internally, that's why you get cash flow reports every month, so that you can always know where we are in actual expenses on these tax funds.
So the 16 million didn't include circuit breakers?
It does include circuit breakers because you have to cut them after you get your budget.
I understand. I'm just
it does, because you have to cut them back
right,
out.
but I was referencing things that are different. So those are similarities between the two, though.
Are you looking at the 16 million in 2024?
The circuit
Right.
breakers doubled this year. So last year's estimate was 2.8. This year they're 4.1. And part of that is our debt, because our debt is much higher this year than it was last year. So the actual numbers don't get resolved until the abstract April 1st. And we can have more conversation about that if you'd like, on how all of those levers work. But you do have to account for that. Right. The other thing in education fund, the reason why it is so much different, and you will see based on the comparison if you look through that presentation. Mrs. Swafford was kind enough to give you a presentation that it is in line with most years' budgets. And that's just simply because it's appropriation. We only get so much revenue. As you can see from the DPI 54, from the basic grant, we are estimated to get $39 million. So with that being said, if we grow students, which is always our goal, you want to be able to take on the expenses without having to do additional appropriations every time should you grow. And knowing that that estimate is 39 million right now, we're taking into account that, as well as possible growth, as well as the fact that should we need to, which we are not expecting to, but should we need to utilize any cash balances, then appropriations would be covered. It does not mean the expenses will be there. We are just asking for the appropriation, and we do want our max levy in the other funds. So we are asking for the maximum amount that we can get based on the DLGF calculation.
And to get to the 40 million, what is the ADM count versus this year we're using?
We net zeroed the ADM count because we don't have ADM yet until October the 1st.
However, you don't use an actual to actual. These are estimated projected
Projection.
revenues.
I
They're
understand.
miscellaneous. And so what we have done is just projected them high so that we can make sure we're covered if we do grow. We're hoping for growth this year, and we usually do this. We usually don't cut ourselves shy so that if we grow, we can make sure we can keep the corporation running in a timely fashion.
And these budget numbers are using all revenue and cash on hand, which is a change from last year.
It's a change from last year. It is not a change from previous practice.
Right, but I understand that.
Yeah.
But so it's not a balanced budget. It's
It is
a
balanced
budget using all revenue and all cash.
It is still a balanced budget. We will not be expending cash balance unless the board approves expense of cash budget. We have the revenue to cover the request. That is a balanced budget. The board does not, the board approves all expenses of additional cash balance. That comes no matter what, it has to be approved. No one expends cash balance without board approval. So at all times, that's why we cash flow, so that you can see the revenue actually coming in and the expenses actually coming in. And you know exactly if you're going to have to use cash balance at any given time. That's why you know that every single month. And this year we're using some cash balance because we approved some raises that required use of cash balance.
Right.
So we are just making sure that we are covering ourselves with appropriation, and we will watch that monthly with the cash monitoring that we do right now, and make sure that we are prepared for next year.
And what's our audit history?
So we have a really great audit history. What I will say is we worked really hard at Richmond Community Schools, board included, to make sure that our records are clean, to make sure that everything is aligned, to make sure that we don't overspend. We are not a part of the DUAB. We don't have to go to DUAB, which is where you have to go when your budgets are unaligned. We went one time because a utility bill came in really high. From the electric company, we got an ECA adjustment that no one was expecting of over 6 digits in December. And so because of that, our 15% became 15.2. And so we had to go to DUAB one time and explain we had a utility bill that had an ECA. Very routine process. They were like, hey, you have the money to cover it. You're good. Check. So we are not in any way in any bad shape with audits. The auditors have been well pleased with what our past practices, as well as where we're at right now. And any time that they have questions, we are there to fix them.
Was the one that I sat through last, was it a year and a half ago? Was that our most recent?
Yes.
Right.
So
Okay.
they will be here this fall.
And they were very complimentary of our practices.
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering that change from the revenue with cash on hand. I mean, we've done it one way for a long time. Last year we changed. You talk to other school districts. How is it most often done? Why is it one? Why did we do it differently last year? And I guess I want to understand that a little better.
I can't speak to why we did it last year, except that everyone is different. So everyone has different ways to do what they do. Mm-hmm. What I will say is this is very common practice in schools. So every governmental agency has different rules to their budget and things that are allowable and things that are not allowable. And then each of those factors is what makes you as an entity different. So schools are very different than libraries. Libraries are very different from counties. Counties are very different than cities. We all have similar features, but everyone has different rules and regulations, I guess, for lack of a better word. This is very common in schools. Most often, schools will allocate their maximum appropriation available so that they don't have to always come back to the DLGF and make requests, because it is a 6 to 8 week process. So if you have something like in August, you have a massive influx of students and you have to add positions, you need to be able to do that to make sure you can cover your classrooms. If you have cut yourself super short on just enough to make things work day to day, you've got 8 weeks before you can really do that. So schools most often allow themselves with appropriation the ability to make sure that the day-to-day work can continue and that students are taken care of. This is, as I said, this is appropriation. We monitor the cash so that we are at all times not overspending.
But budgets for schools are most often created with cash on hand and revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in the event. The other thing is that, like, you'll notice rainy day, we don't appropriate everything in rainy day because that's your fund to make things happen. All we do is do the placeholder for buses. And that's where, if there, and we've talked about this at the board level a couple of times, if there gets to be a lot of cash balance, you can move some to rainy day from other places and then it just sits there. So that's just, it's an option that we have. It's not one that we've had and used for a while, just simply because we haven't needed to, but yeah.
I have a question about the bus replacement. So I know, obviously, I've seen that chart of how we go through, and I did see like the 10-year. So I guess 10 years, which I think can change with alternate fuels. Like, is it just like kind of a placeholder? Like that's how you have to submit it, or can you go back and say, hey, we might try?
Yeah. So statute kind of recommends that 12-year is your replacement plan for a bus. Some buses are lemons. Some buses are really great and they can run like forever, right? So the bus replacement plan was changed about 4 years ago, and it was shrunk for the DLGF. You just report 5 of your 12 years. We at RCS had, when Mrs. Robinson was on the board and president, she charged us to change our plan because when we had the Carpenter plant, we had purchased big bulk groups of buses. So we had a couple of years where we had like 10 buses to replace in 1 year. Well, what happened with the change to the operations fund and some other levers that occurred, you were capped at how much you could levy. When that happened, those 10 years got really hard to make happen. So we decided at the discretion of the board who had asked us to look at it to take 5 years and push out buses, and we did 2 a year so that everything could get 5 replacements in a year. And then there's 1 year that's a little bit different because of the type of bus and the cost, but that allowed us equitable annual budgets, and that is how the levy is made. And so it worked out really good. I think that the mechanics at the bus garage probably hate it because you do for those years that get pushed out, you have to do 2 inspections. But we're at the end of that, so we're almost back to our regular cycle of 12 years. What I will say is when you have a poor one, you can change it. So that's why we do it every year, because if one is not good and it needs replaced before your 12-year mark, you just move it up on the list. Okay. So each year we evaluate that, and then if it's like this year, we didn't have to make changes from last year because those are really the buses that need replaced, and then we just move forward.
Okay. So can I think about that? Yeah. So you're saying that this is a plan, but if next year we're going all electric, then we can't, I mean.
We can go that way.
But
yeah,
that can be adjusted.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Anytime. Like that's just, and this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
So
got it.
that's absolutely, you just change that for your budget season and then your budget gets reflective of that.
I don't know. This is just more, not necessarily specific to this, but, you know, in my worlds, right, some, you know, say Alex, Mr. Hitzbigger comes to you and it's like, hey, next year we really need X, Y, and Z. So when you're kind of building this, are building leaders or departments coming and you're really sort of trying to account for things they want, things they need.
Yeah. So this year was a little different because we had a change kind of in the middle of the year. But the routine way that we have built budgets before is we meet with principals, we meet with department heads, and then we get their list and we kind of see what we can do. Because sometimes every building has your salaries and benefits, but they also have professional development. They have supplies for classroom supplies and administrative supplies. And then they also have mobile equipment, which is your technology or like snow blowers or like things that they might need. And each building is basically similar in elementaries, middles, highs. And that way everybody consistently gets an equitable budget, and then you kind of adjust for ADM when a building is bigger. But that usually happens in the spring so that you can build your budget in the fall. And then one thing that I know that we usually and typically do is we'll do it even on the facility side. And we did that this year. We actually have Google Docs that they can put in things as the year goes through, that they can say, you know what, this came to mind. I'd love to see us do this. And sometimes we can make it happen. Sometimes we can't. But you can see like in the plan this year's, if we can do the walls at test because they have wallpaper. One thing that the principal and the custodian said was, I would love to get rid of this wallpaper. It's a lot. Like they have to glue it a lot. It holds a lot of dirt. So like we listen to that and we do as much of that as we can. But yes, there's communication. And the other thing is, as you are talking about and making decisions, there's a folder that gets started immediately in January for the next year. And we write down things that we hear so that we can make sure that that's on the radar to work into the budget for the next year.
Do we have any money built in for like developing our STEAM program? I mean, I try to look through my items, but
So Hibbert has about $300,000 written in for their total facility portion. With that, about between 65 and 80 of that will be routine maintenance, but the rest has been allocated for any STEAM needs that we have.
Okay.
As that continues to develop, we want to make sure that we're, keeping that on forefront and doing some of that. The other thing this year, and Ms. Pickering's point, I can show you an exact example of that. So in your technology, it's a little bit higher than usual because we need to replace staff devices in preparation for student devices. So we're having to go ahead and prepare for the sustainability of our plan and make sure that we do that. And that's in there as well. So, but yes, there is some money allocated to STEAM or for Hibbert that is, planning to do some work on that. Any other questions?
What were areas where you mentioned STEAM and staff devices, where there were priorities put, where extra funds over last year were allocated?
So primarily there, at least in operations, because you do have levy caps, so you only have so much revenue. In the education fund, we know that next year will be a collective bargaining year, so we have to be prepared for that. And we will start, conversations in the spring about what that looks like, what we will need. We have to be aware of that and conscious of it. The other thing is we've heard that professional development is still a need. We have new curriculum. We have a lot of new teachers. So our age difference in new versus old teachers, you have a lot of things you have to review and some development that has to be done that maybe you didn't have to do the year before. We did place some funds additionally into professional development to make sure that is covered. We've listened to teachers, we've heard what they've said, and we want to make sure that we can get the resources to the buildings to make sure that can happen, both at the district level and the building level. So those are just a few of the more direct ones of that.
So on the safety side with RCS Police Department, there's some concerns, at least that I have, where we're having to cover nights, and the recent couple weeks haven't helped those concerns, at least. Has there been any priority with RCSPD, and has there been any change in the allocation of expected appropriations and staff and equipment as it's associated to our CSPD.
We're actually meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, to not only review that, but also extend such conversations, especially in light of what has occurred, but also in light of some of the most recent conversations that we've had with some of our partner agencies.
Yeah, so the other thing that I can say is right now the budget is $338,000 for next year for the safety department for SROs, our CSPD. With that, one thing that we know is there is never enough. There will always be a need for more. It is increased over this year by about $25,000 for equipment and supplies. One thing that, we're going to talk about tomorrow, we will see, what that is. I know the request that Mr. Walton has received, and it would be substantially different. However, everything is important. And so one thing that we just have to consider is the overall direction at that point. And so we'll be talking more about that, but that's the current budget setting.
And Ms. Lesky, to your question, when it comes to priority, when it comes to such allocations, is there a preference when it comes to or a particular figure that we're looking at, or any type of insight?
I don't know if I have a number in my mind.
Yeah.
But when you start thinking that these folks are paid from 7 to 3, 7 to 4, 8 to 4, whatever the time frame is, and they get a call in the middle of the night, or they get beyond those hours, and any call is not being responded to by municipal police departments, it has to be our police department responding. Those calls, I hope they're not very often, but I know they happen. And then you have one SRO in a school of 1,500 students also doing the investigations of quite a few. We may have had a lockdown or secure classroom on 4 occasions, but the number of investigations is probably 4 or 5 times that are done, I'm guessing. And you start thinking, okay, there's only so much a person can do. And I have concerns of our HR compliance for being able, for those folks taking those calls, whether they're paid or not, in the middle of the night.
So I will say that we have that concern for our maintenance crew as well, because they actually get emergency calls. How many times a week? Yeah. So that
5, 6,
yeah,
at least.
So that is a natural part of the budget we do keep into consideration for those emergencies that we don't know about right now. And so the RCSPD department is a part of that, and we realize that. So.
And so based on some conversations we're meeting here tomorrow, there's be some more adjustments to the budget that we're seeing now. Is that correct?
I think that.
Well, I think that, we could do it tomorrow. We could leave it as is and do that through transfers once the budget's approved. That is because it will affect other dynamics in the budget, and there are things to work through if that occurs, if it's a higher amount. And so that's it. Yes, and it could be. And it may not. It just depends on the meeting tomorrow and where we go from there.
I only have one other priority. To get that tie that Mr. Pritchard has, if we could put enough money in the budget to get a Michigan tie off that guy and something from an Islamic school. Oh my goodness.
So the priest,
sorry.
Not the socks too. You said the socks. Yeah, the socks. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you haven't seen the Chinese neighbors at the birthday. You haven't seen the jacket. I'm sparing you of the jacket. He is.
Sorry,
Yes.
did I say that?
That's okay. He'll have a jacket next week. Oh, jacket.
Thank you, Melissa. and
Sorry.
Karen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies.
I guess recognize the time that it takes to put this down, and I'm really impressed with like knowing exactly when we ask, like what questions, you knew exactly how much we're in the budget. And plus, I know you've spent a lot of time putting this together, so thank you.
Good show. Thank you, ladies.
As far as a preview for the upcoming meetings and events, the October work session and business meeting will be on October the 9th, with the work session starting at 5:30 p.m. in the old boardroom, and the business meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. here. Bell ringer, Dr. Wright.
President Broughton, trustees, I'm going to ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker, Director of Student Support and Communications, rejoin us for this evening's bell ring. As she's making her way out, I know that the artwork from the conference will back and we'll talk about that. Oh, yeah. How is the pack?
Just wanted to highlight the Richmond Community Schools 7th grade boys football team. They have been undefeated all season. They have their last game tomorrow. So that's here at Live Oakville at 6 o'clock, and the theme is Wear Red. But we also have another event tomorrow night as well. So that's Title I night. That's a math success recipe for success. And we'll have an immunization clinic there as well. It's from 5 to 7 at Elstra Plaza. And we'll have an interpreters there. And we have a celebrity chef from Chartwell's also, which is very exciting. So have a lot going on. So just really appreciate everyone's hard work for all that.
Mrs. Hazelbaker, might just ask one clarifying question. You stated that the football team is undefeated. What grade level?
7th grade.
7th grade. So again, exercising the feeder program. What?
So 7th and
Our 7th and 8th grade football teams, and who's our 7th grade coach? Oh, it's Trey Rogers.
I'm gonna be here, right?
Mr. Rogers, I'm curious to know, and again, this is totally, I apologize, board in advance. Again, our 7th grade team, 7-0, 8th grade team.
8th grade's lost twice. The first 2 games, but ever since then, them boys been
Very successful. And as we know, as a former varsity head coach, it's the feeder program.
Yes, sir.
That makes all the difference in the world at the varsity level. And so kudos to you
And I
all.
think our 5th and 6th graders also played this Saturday.
Yep.
So
They won last Saturday, 24-14. So they're looking good too.
You can go. We appreciate you. Appreciate your work right here. Thank
Hey,
you.
come
Sir.
tomorrow. We're red. 6 o'clock over here.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.